أهلا بكم إلى هذه الحلقة من مستقبل الطاقة، وهذه عناويننا. مع اقتراب السلام في أوكرانيا، هل تعود أوروبا إلى إدمانها القديم على الغاز الروسي؟ وماذا سيتغير في أساسيات أسواق النفط إذا خرجت روسيا من الحرب والعقوبات؟ حين اندلعت الحرب في أوكرانيا قبل 3 سنوات ونصف السنة، لم يصدق كثيرون أن بإمكان أوروبا أن تتخلص من الإدمان على الغاز الروسي، لكن هذا ما بدأ يتحقق بالفعل. قبل الحرب كان الغاز الروسي شريانا رئيسيا للاقتصاد الأوروبي. عام 2021 شكلت روسيا نحو 45% تقريبا من واردات الغاز الأوروبية، أي ما يقارب 155 مليار متر مكعب سنويا. وبلغ الاعتماد على روسيا ذروته مع تشغيل خط أنابيب نورد ستريم 1 عام 2011، ثم مع اكتمال مشروع نورد ستريم 2 عام 2021، لكن هذا الخط طبعا لم يدخل الخدمة بسبب اندلاع الحرب وتفجيره لاحقا. القرار السياسي بالاعتماد على روسيا في ملف الغاز اعتبر في نظر الكثيرين خطيئة استراتيجية للمستشارة الألمانية السابقة أنجيلا ميركل، فالغاز الروسي كان أرخص بكثير طبعا من الغاز المستورد، الغاز المسال LNG مهما كان مصدره، لكن الثمن الحقيقي كان سياسيا واستراتيجيا. واشنطن كانت دائما معارضة لهذا الخيار الأوروبي، ولطالما حذرت الاتحاد الأوروبي وألمانيا تحديدا من أن موسكو قد تستخدم الغاز كسلاح. وترامب بالذات ضغط كثيرا على ميركل في ولاياته الأولى لاستبدال الغاز الروسي بالغاز الأمريكي المسال، والذي كان يسميه حينها غاز الحرية. تبدلت الصورة في ظل الحرب الأوكرانية. انخفضت الواردات الأوروبية من الغاز الروسي من 155 مليار متر مكعب ب 2021 إلى 62 مليارا بال 2022، ثم إلى 28 مليارا في 2023. وكذا تراجع الاعتماد من 45% من الاستهلاك عام 2021 إلى حوالي 15% فقط في 2023، واستقر العام الماضي تقريبا عند نحو 18%. لكن من أين أتى الغاز البديل؟ كما تتوقعون طبعا من أمريكا. عام 2021 لم تتجاوز حصة الولايات المتحدة 27% فقط من واردات أوروبا من الغاز المسال، وفي 2022 ارتفعت إلى 44%، ثم إلى 48% في 2023، وتجاوزت النصف هذا العام. وحتى أن الغاز المسال أيضا حصته ازدادت كثيرا من مزيج الطاقة الأوروبي. لكن إذا انتهت الحرب لن تعود الأمور إلى سابق عهدها بسهولة. ففي سياق الحرب التجارية فرض ترامب اتفاقا على الاتحاد الأوروبي يقضي بشراء منتجات طاقة أمريكية ب 750 مليار دولار على مدى 3 سنوات، أي نحو 250 مليار دولار سنويا. المشكلة أن واردات أوروبا من الطاقة الأمريكية بلغت العام الماضي حوالي 70 إلى 78 مليار دولار فقط، أي أن المطلوب منها الآن أن تزيد استيرادها من الولايات المتحدة إلى أكثر من 3 أضعاف، وهو أمر شبه مستحيل من حيث البنية التحتية والقدرة الاستيعابية وحتى مقدار الاستهلاك. بهذا لم يعد الخيار الأوروبي الآن محصورا فقط بالاعتبارات الأوروبية، بل بات مرتبطا بالملف التجاري المعقد والمفاوضات بشأنه مع إدارة ترامب. بالمقلب الآخر هناك سؤال مهم: هل الأوروبيون مستعدون للعودة للإدمان على الغاز الروسي الأرخص ثمنا بغض النظر عن مخاطره السياسية كما فعلت ميركل سابقا، أم أن أوروبا تعلمت الدرس ولن تنساه قريبا؟ من المؤكد أن الخيار لن يكون اقتصاديا بحتا ومجرد فرق أسعار، بل تتدخل فيه السياسة والاستراتيجية. حول الخيارات الأوروبية المعقدة بشأن إمدادات الغاز قابلت إليسا باسكو المحللة الأولى لشؤون الغاز الأوروبي في انرجي اسبيكتس، ولكن سألتها بداية عن سبب انخفاض الأسعار حاليا مع ارتفاع مستويات المخزونات فوق مستوى آخر 5 سنوات. لنتابع.
So I cover European gas here, and the market has been mainly been moved by what is going on with Russian LNG supply. So there's been a lot of expectations on what will, when is that supply going to return to the market, if we have a peace deal, if we're going to have a peace deal anytime soon. But in the meantime, the market here in Europe and in general in the global LNG market is looking still very tight. Europe has been making a lot of good progress in its storage injections this year. And that has been mainly because it has been attracting a lot of LNG. And in a way, it also has been lucky because the demand in Asia has been quite big. But that could change quite quickly. And with gas prices at these levels, it could lose a lot of the flexible LNG supply, which could go to Asia. And that would put at risk Europe's storage stock build.
So how do you expect gas markets to react immediately if a peace agreement in Ukraine were reached? Would the impact on the prices be short-lived, or could it reshape the market fundamentals?
Well, if we do have a peace agreement anytime soon, the market would immediately crash. We are skeptical that actually any Russian supply will come to the market. On the LNG side, that's a bit more uncertain. It will really depend what the priority for the Trump administration is, if the US export ambitions are more important or a quick peace deal is more important. On the pipeline supply side to Europe, that is a bit more uncertain. That's not very likely to come in. Europe has made it very clear that it doesn't really want this supply back. But in terms of price action, if we do get a Paris deal, prices will crash right away. So in terms of LNG coming back, we're talking about 20 BCM coming back quite quickly to the market. So we could see prices going down to 20 euros per megawatt hours. And at the latest prices, we are at 31 euros. So that's a very big drop right away.
So do you think that the return of the Russian gas is a realistic scenario, or even partially?
So LNG would be more credible. Pipeline supply is not very credible. So if I were to break that down, the more realistic supply routes to Europe, pipeline supply to come to Europe would be via Ukraine. And Ukraine has said repeatedly that it needs enough security guarantees to actually restart talks on a potential agreement with Russia again. So there hasn't been any talks on potential security guarantees. Those are not being offered at the moment, so we don't see that as a credible scenario. The other route would be via Nord Stream, but then Nord Stream has been sanctioned by the EU in its 18th sanctions package. And even if those were to be removed, there's only one pipeline functioning, and Germany would have to really have to approve it, the German government. And we don't really see that happening.
Okay, so let's talk about another aspect that relates to the fundamentals of the market. As Europe now approaches to the end of the summer, how do you assess the current levels of gas storage across the continent? Are the inventories sufficient heading into the winter season?
So Europe has made very good progress this summer. And as I mentioned earlier, that has been thanks to strong LNG imports, which has been supported by very weak demand in Asia. But that said, European stocks are still very below where they were last year, and also very much below where they have been historically. So even though they have made very good progress, there's still a few months to come. And with prices at these levels, we're already seeing LNG imports into Europe weakening. So Europe will really need to price higher to keep maintaining those LNG flows and aided stock build. And that would really require European gas prices, pricing remaining competitive against liquids prices.
Elisa, this summer has been marked by extreme heat waves across Europe. To what extent do these conditions increase demand for gas-fired power generation for air conditioning? I mean, we're used to talk about demand for heating in the northern hemisphere, but not for cooling. So how significant was this impact on the market?
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, it is a big factor, but we haven't really seen very significant heat waves this summer. There has been some spikes in gas demand in the electricity sector, but usually not that much to drive prices. We have a lot of nuclear availability, and renewables output is generally quite high, bearing hydro, which has been quite weak. So it hasn't really been that much of a factor.
Do you think that that would be a factor that we have to watch in the years to come?
Yes. I mean, beyond that, it's also new demand drivers in Europe that could really boost power sector gas demand.
نتوقف مع فاصل قصير نتابع بعده مستقبل طاقة وفيه. خريطة صادرات النفط الروسية غيرتها الحرب، فكيف ستتغير إذا حل السلام؟ غيرت الحرب الروسية الأوكرانية عام 2022 خريطة إمدادات النفط بشكل كبير، مع تحول النفط الروسي نحو الصين والهند بشكل أساسي، باعتبار أنهما تشتريان هذا النفط بخصومات سعرية كبيرة. هذه هي خريطة صادرات النفط الروسية في النصف الأول من العام الحالي. لاحظوا أن 85% منها تقريبا تذهب إلى الصين والهند. لكن حتى لو توقفت الحرب اليوم فلن تعود السوق إلى ما كانت عليه قبله. الأرجح أن روسيا لن تستعيد بسهولة حصتها السابقة في أوروبا بسبب فقدان الثقة نوعا ما والسياسات الأوروبية الجديدة لتقليل الاعتماد عليها، وبالتالي ربما تهدئ نهاية الحرب الأسواق مؤقتا، لكنها قد لا تبدل بشكل دراماتيكي المعادلات الجديدة التي نشأت في أسواق الطاقة العالمية. ويبقى السؤال الأهم هنا بالنسبة للأسعار: هل سيتدفق النفط الروسي بشكل أكبر؟ هل سيؤثر على ميزان العرض والطلب؟ حول هذا الملف قابلت أولي هانسن رئيس استراتيجية السلع في ساكسو بانك، وسألته عما إذا كانت النهاية المحتملة للحرب في أوكرانيا ستعزز أساسيات السوق النفطية أو ستغيرها بشكل جذري.
I believe the market is probably has priced in a premium now for what could happen if we do get a peaceful solution. Simply that we have traded lower in expectation that perhaps a peace deal could increase production. I don't really see that happen. So even if we should get a peaceful solution, I don't see that as further extending prices to the downside from current levels. Simply because the main focus is really on whether Russia will be able to increase production relatively soon. I don't think that is the case. Also, they are part of the quota system, which probably will keep them within that framework. So overall, I think we're probably a little bit too optimistic in terms of weak prices right now, in terms of what we can expect from these negotiations.
We've seen the big eight of OPEC Plus announce the production increases several times for now, yet oil prices haven't moved much. What's holding back the market's response for that increases?
Well, that is a very good question. And if you look at what the market is looking for compared to where the price is, then there is a discrepancy. Basically, I would say prices are holding up relatively well considering the amount of production increases that has been announced. But what I think is important to note is that one thing is announcing a production increase or raising the quotas. Another thing is how much is actually hitting the global market. And we have to keep in mind that some of these producers, they have been overproducing, so they will have to compensate for that first. So that means that the increase is not to the extent that that has been agreed. And also there's been a relatively strong demand here over the summer months, which has also kept the market balances relatively tight. So, but nevertheless, as we head into the winter months in the northern hemisphere and the lower demand season, there is obviously a risk that the market could become oversupplied, and that will probably keep the prices here in the 60s. I don't really see a drop much below 60 at this point in time. I think Brent is more or less locked in here in the 60s, between 60 and the lower 70s.
And how does the U.S. production affect the supply in the market?
Well, I think current prices are low enough really to slow the U.S. production growth. I think we're seeing that already. We are looking at the weekly data. We're not really seeing any growth right now this year, and it does indicate that we are already at levels where producers will start to cut back some of the high cost production wells, and that obviously leaves some room, basically meaning that this phenomenal rise we've seen for a number of years from the U.S. is not going to be the main factor going forward. There are other non-OPEC plus producers that are expected to increase production in the coming years, but we have to remember global oil demand will continue to rise for the foreseeable future, and we need to find 6 to 7% every year just to replace expiring wells. So with that in mind, the production increase we're seeing from OPEC probably will play into that and basically mean that the price impact will not be as negative as what the market perhaps has been looking for.
So do you think that's the right strategy for OPEC Plus?
Well, I think first and foremost, OPEC, led by Saudi Arabia, they're not going to do anything that really damages their revenue. So I think the decision to increase production so far has proved to be the right one. It has given market share back to some of these major oil producers, which has actually helped keep the market stable and balanced for the past few years, where we ran through a period of overproduction, which then mitigated. So I think they have an idea that they can see in their demand looking forward that there will be enough demand for that increased production in order to maintain prices at these levels. They are obviously moving away from the expectations for higher prices that we saw in recent years. But I think they have looked into the future, and they see that this demand, that there will be enough demand to mitigate or to justify this increase. And at the same time, current low prices, as we mentioned, is already starting to have an negative impact on high-cost producers. So this will slowly move market share back towards some of the key OPEC producers.
Moving to the gas markets, the September Henry Hub futures fell below $3 per MMBTU, while inventories are running above the 5-year average for this period of the year. What does this indicate about the health of the gas market today?
Well, the gas market is in good health right now, and I would say it continues to be a little bit of a head scratcher that one of the most important raw materials in the world to our fuels, natural gas, is trading so cheap as it is in the US. But obviously, if we move outside the US, the gas price is somewhat different. As you say, we're trading below $3 in the US. If we equate that to where we're trading in Europe and in Asia, we are still above $10. Even though the European price has come down, also looking for potential peace dividend from a peace deal with Ukraine. I think some of these hopes are probably a little bit premature because it would mean it would require Europe to change their stance on Russia and restart buying gas. And I think that really still is a very big question whether they will that or not.
On a strategic note in this regard, if the war in Ukraine is resolved, what options would Europe have to secure gas? And is Russian gas even a realistic option anymore?
Well, if you had asked me a few months ago, I probably said that prices will always be the determining factor. So if Russian gas is the cheapest, then it will be bought. But just back in June, there was a decision made by EU leaders that by 2027 they wanted to cut all Russian supplies all the way down to zero. Whether that's going to be changed as part of a negotiation, if we do get a deal, that remains to be seen. But if just looking at the practicalities of things, we have 5 pipelines from Russia going into Europe, and right now there's only one of them operational, and potentially only another one could come into play if we do start to buy gas. So if we should make the decision to buy gas from Russia, it would be much smaller quantities that we have seen in the past. And it would still leave enough room to still buy large quantities especially from the US, simply because the European energy demand or power demand, just like everywhere else in the world, will continue to rise in the coming years.
بهذا نأتي إلى ختام هذه الحلقة من مستقبل الطاقة. نشكر لكم حسن المتابعة وإلى اللقاء الأسبوع المقبل.